Do you want to make more money on eBay? Are you tired of spending all day sourcing at thrift stores and listing items to only turn a small profit on eBay? These are two common issues that most resellers face. We often think that the solution is to do more sourcing, more thrift stores, more items, more listing. But what I have found is you can save time and make more money by focusing on elimination rather than addition. Now, there's a lot of YouTube videos out there that talk about which items you specifically should go out, find, and resell on eBay. However, this video is going to be completely different. I'm going to give you my list of rules that I use when I'm outsourcing. This list of rules helps me determine whether I should actually pick up an item to resell or if I should just pass on that item. And make sure you stick around to the end because the last rule is a complete game changer for all resellers. Now, a quick disclaimer. These are just rules that I use when I'm outsourcing that work for me and my business. There's pros and cons to everything, and you actually have to go out and figure out which rules are going to work for you and your business model. Now, even though I have these rules, they're not set in stone. In fact, I often break these rules if I can find a good reason to, such as this item is difficult to deal with, however, the profit margin is large. So even though I'm going to share these rules with you, think of them more as guidelines than set in stone hard rules that you have to follow. These are just guidelines that I use to help me determine whether I should be considering picking up an item or if I should just pass on the item and try to find something better. Number 1, broken items. In general, I don't want to pick up items that are broken. They typically sell for less than functional items. However, the main reason I don't want to pick up broken items is because they typically end up in a pile. If you have been reselling for any amount of time, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Those items that you convince yourself to buy because you're going to repair it or you're going to order those parts. Those items get set to the side. They end up building up a pile, and before you know it, you end up with a pile of broken items that are waiting on parts or waiting for you to find time to actually go and repair these items. That pile that's sitting over there full of broken electronics, that is a pile of money and time. It's going to take a bunch of time to go in and test and fix all of those items. And that's money that's sitting there tied up in inventory that's not even listed, that the buyer can't actually even buy. Now, there are some exceptions to this rule. I will often pick up broken items if I know for a fact that they sell in the condition that they're in. So if I don't actually have to go and order a part or sit and repair the item in order to sell the item, if I can sell it as is for parts or repair and there's a large enough profit margin, I'm still going to pick up that broken item. However, what I like to avoid is those project items. Those items that I buy and say, oh, when I get some time, I'll fix that item. It's worth it because there's a large profit. I just need to order a few parts and change out a few things and then I'll be able to resell it. The problem is that I never end up finding enough time to actually go and do all those steps. And I tend to just focus on the easy list items and avoid those project items. Number 2, large items. Now, I used to pick up a lot of large items to resell on eBay. Everything from VCR DVD combos to CRT TVs to large kitchen appliances and even automotive parts. I used to buy and resell a lot of these. And while there is a good amount of money in reselling these large items, it comes with a huge risk. One of the major risks of selling these large items is the return. So that VCR DVD combo sounds amazing to resell until you realize that if a buyer claims that that item does not work, you're paying for shipping both directions. And a lot of times you end up back with a broken item. A return on one of these large, heavy items can actually eat up all of your profit margin and leave nothing left. And now you're stuck with maybe a broken item or a destroyed item, and you had to pay shipping both ways, and it ate up any profit that you could have ever made on that item. The other issue with large items is the amount of space. Now, me personally, I'm very limited on space, so I'm always thinking about how much space this item is going to take up. How many video games could I fit where that large kitchen appliance is sitting? How many t-shirts could I fit in that box where that CRT TV is sitting? The other thing is these items typically take a longer time to ship. I could ship probably 10 t-shirts in the amount of time it takes to ship one CRT TV properly. Now, there are trade-offs everywhere, and there are some large items that are still worth reselling on eBay. However, for me, I prefer to spend my time focusing on small items that are easy to store and easy to ship. Number 3, size-specific items. Now, yes, I actually do sell a lot of clothing, from shirts all the way to sneakers and shoes. However, one of the major issues with reselling clothing is that it's size dependent. So think about a video game. That video game may have been released on 1 or 2 systems. So you're just looking for that buyer that wants that game and has that system. Now think about a pair of jeans. That person not only has to want that brand of jeans, but they have to be that waist size, they have to have that inseam, they have to want that style or cut of jeans, and they have to want that color of the jeans. There are a lot more variables that go into size-specific items. And all of these variables limit the amount of customers that you can reach. If you're selling a size 40 pants, that size isn't going to work for anyone except for those people that wear that size. So you have now limited your actual audience. And that's why whenever I'm out and I'm picking up size specific items, from shoes to hats to shirts to pants, anything that has a size on it, I'm very conscious of what size the item is and if that's a size that those customers are likely to be looking for. A great example is a small t-shirt has a slower sell-through rate than, say, an extra large t-shirt. If you are enjoying this video, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button so you don't miss the future content that I have coming out. Number 4, fragile items. Now, I almost completely avoid fragile items because I just don't want to deal with them. The only time I'll actually pick up a fragile item is if the profit margin is super large. Because I don't have a system to store fragile items, nor do I want to spend the amount of time it requires to ship these fragile items. With fragile items, you also risk more returns. These items will typically end up being broken in the mail more often than, say, a t-shirt or a pair of jeans would. And now, yes, you can actually put insurance on these fragile items. However, that still takes more time and money. Typically, the insurance costs money, and if you have to file that claim, that takes more time. So for me personally, I want to focus on items that are not fragile and are easy to resell. When you're shipping fragile items, you also have to account for the amount of shipping material. From bubbles to foam to double boxing these items. Who wants to sell a coffee mug for $10 and spend the amount of time to double box that coffee mug to make sure it arrives not broken? Number 5, expensive brand new sealed items. These items can actually be really great. However, they come with a huge risk. These items are often targeted by scammers. These are the items that people will buy, open up, remove the item, and then send you back an empty box or send you back something else, especially if they're electronic items. The higher the value of the item and the fact that it's brand new and sealed, the more likely you are to run into scammers. And even if it's not a scammer, it might be someone that buys the item, opens that item up, uses it, decides that they don't want it, and then returns that item. Now you end up with that item sent back to you, and it's in a condition that isn't worth as much as it was when it was brand new. And the problem lies in when you receive that item back, if you are top rated or if you offer free returns, you can withhold up to 50% to recoup that loss. However, you can't withhold up to 100%. So you'll never be able to fully recover all of the money if that person sends that item back in a used condition. Now, I actually sell a lot of brand new items and I love it when I find them because they're easy to list, they usually require no testing and cleaning, and they sell quickly. However, as soon as that value starts to increase, I start to question whether it's worth it, especially if I'm spending a large amount of money on purchasing that item and then hoping that that sale goes well. If I only have a few dollars into that item, then it doesn't really matter. However, if I'm paying up for a brand new sealed item and I'm hoping nothing goes wrong with that brand new sealed electronic, that's not a business that I want to be in. Number 6, low dollar items. This is kind of self-explanatory, but I do not want to be selling items that do not have enough profit margin. Every single item that you sell on eBay requires photographs, requires a listing, requires storage, requires shipping, and requires customer service. So whenever I'm selling an item, I consider all that. I consider the amount of time it's going to take to photograph that item, list that item, ship that item, and deal with customer support. I want to make sure I have enough profit margin built into the item to cover all of this time I'm going to spend dealing with the sale. Also, low dollar items typically attract worse customers. I typically end up selling low dollar items to the worst people on eBay. I don't know what it is, but for me, if I sell a expensive item, typically that customer is better to deal with than the customer that I'm selling a cheap item to. Now, I often do end up with low dollar items, whether it's because I bought it and I thought it was worth more, or because I bought a bundle or a lot of things and there was some things in there that I'm parting out and they're only worth a few dollars. If I end up with a bunch of low dollar items, I'll either create a bundle or I'll just sell them somewhere else. It's not worth the hassle for me to list low dollar items on eBay. Number 7, slow sell-through rate items. This is another one that doesn't really require any explanation, but I always want to make sure my items have demand. If there isn't a customer demand for the item, it's going to be so much harder to actually sell that item. It's pretty simple. I'm in the reselling business, which means I want to get things out the door as fast as possible. I'm not in the storage business. I don't want to have a store with 10,000 items in a big warehouse and storing all this stuff. I want to pick things up and get them right back out as fast as possible. And the only way to do that is by focusing on sell-through rate. If you want more information on sell-through rate, check out this video here that I made that breaks it down further. Number 8, hard to list items. So whether it's a big bulky item or an item that's going to require a bunch of research, I never want to be picking up items that are going to require a ton of time or a ton of effort to list. So I don't want to spend all day doing a bunch of research to figure out what this item is to only find out this item sells for $25. Just like I don't want to bring home a big bulky item that doesn't fit in my photo station. Then I have to get creative with how I'm going to photograph it. This all takes more time and gets me outside of my actual process. The amount of time that I spend doing research on the item or trying to photograph this big bulky item, I could spend finding better items that fit in my photo setup that I know about that are easier to list. Number 9, items that require a specific amount of knowledge. Now this kind of goes hand in hand with the last one. However, think about things like Pokemon cards and sports cards. If those are not your categories that you sell in, then it's very difficult to actually figure out what they are worth. There is so much nuance to how much a card is actually worth. And if you don't have that knowledge, you're going to spend a lot of time going through and trying to figure out how much this card is actually worth. I see sports cards out at yard sales fairly frequently, and usually it's in a very big box. The last thing I want to do is bring home one of these big boxes and sit here and try to figure out how much each of these cards is worth. And maybe, yes, there's a few in there that are worth a good amount of money, but the majority of them are going to be worth almost nothing. So if I don't have the knowledge going in and buying these items, I have no business buying these items to start with. I want to find the items that I know for sure, I know exactly what it is, exactly how much it's worth. I don't want to say, I think it's worth this, and then come home and do some research, find out because it was released in this year versus this year that I am actually not going to make the same amount of money that I thought I was going to make. Anything that requires that little nuance or that specialty knowledge, if I don't have that knowledge, I'm just going to pass on it. Number 10, dirty items. From boots that are covered in mud, to shirts that have stains on them, to electronics that are dirty and dusty. I want to avoid items that are going to require a lot of time to clean. Once again, time is money, and I could be out finding items that don't require as much time to clean. Now, most used items do require some effort of cleaning. However, there's a difference between a pair of shoes that were lightly used and a pair of shoes that are caked in mud. One is going to take significantly longer to clean than the other. Same with shirts. Now, yes, I wash all my clothing, but I don't want to be sitting out there scrubbing stains and trying to find all the stains on the shirt. So instead, I focus on finding clothing that isn't stained. And the same thing goes for electronics. Now, some electronics might just require a wiped out and some testing. However, I don't want to be taking apart the electronic and blowing the dust out of the fan and cleaning the inside of it. If this electronic looks like it was sitting out in a dusty barn, one, it's likely to not work, and two, even if it does, it's going to require a significant amount of time to actually clean the item. So anytime I see items that I know are going to take a significant amount of time to clean, I just pass on them and try to go find something better. Number 11, if it's not a hell yes, then it's a no. Oftentimes I find myself standing there convincing myself to buy these items. This is the last thing I want to be doing. I don't want to be sitting there saying things like, oh, it just requires a quick repair. Oh, it just requires some cleaning. It's just going to require some testing. Yes, it's big and bulky and fragile, but I'll just take some extra time and ship it really well. I don't want to be convincing myself to buy the item. I almost never regret leaving one of these items behind. I never regret leaving those dirty sneakers behind or leaving that piece of fragile glass behind, because I know the amount of time and effort it's going to take to actually sell those items, list those items, and ship those items out. What I do end up having regret about is that pile of broken electronics sitting out in my garage that I have to look at and say, oh, well, I picked that up because it's worth a good amount of money, but I just have to order some parts and take an afternoon and repair it. Those items sit there forever, and those are the purchases that I actually regret. We all know the items we want when we go out sourcing, but then we sit there and try to convince ourselves to buy the other ones. We all know how good that feeling is when you find that right deal and you actually can't even hand over the money fast enough to buy it. You end up walking away with a huge smile on your face because you know you just scored. That's what I'm after. I'm after the hell yes, not the maybe or convincing myself. If it's not a hell yes, then it's a no, and I walk away from the item. If you've enjoyed this video, I think you're going to love this one, so go ahead and give it a click.